We'll ask Doug as he now joins us. Doug, before we get going on some sports SEC topics, Christian Bale, as I was just talking about, might come back as Batman. Now, in your mind, you've got some age on me. Is Michael Keaton, George Clooney, Adam West, or Val Kilmer the best Batman of your lifetime?
I'm going to go with Keaton just because I think Bale is too serious, man. It was too dark for me with him. If I'm watching Batman, I don't care to. I want to see some light every now and then. And Keaton was halfway comedic at times with it, so I'm going with Michael Keaton. But maybe it's because I enjoyed the Mr. Mom movie so much. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Could be. Big fan of Michael Keaton. He's
fantastic. As Doug was kind enough to join us this morning, host of the Max Roundtable and the Score in Alabama. Doug, the ACC just come out with their scheduling model yesterday, and I guarantee you, Daryl, and Charlie were touching on that yesterday, probably even you this morning on your television program. You think the SEC should follow suit in what the ACC is doing?
Times a million, I think it. And I said it on social media yesterday, of course. The ACC model is 3-5-5, meaning 3 permanent opponents, and then the other 10 teams, 5 here, 5 there for home and away with everybody in the league in a 4-year period. For the SEC, tide be 3-6-6, obviously, because it's going to be a 16-team league as opposed to a 14-team league. And listen, whenever you're scheduling for a 16-team league, everybody's not going to be happy. It's impossible to get everybody on the exact same page. But having covered this league for 4 decades, I've just heard too many horror stories of kids that have been there 4 and 5 years and have never seen this venue or never even played that team. I just like the 3-6, and I know there's pushback. I think, didn't Arkansas push back a little bit on it? You helped me with that. I'm not sure which teams exactly don't like that look, that they don't want to play 9 conference games, but I'm all about playing 9, and I think it needs to happen that way. I don't know where you stand, but I'm for 9 games for sure.
I would like 9 games, Doug. I think the teams, if I remember reading correctly, was Kentucky because of the Louisville matchup, and then Florida because of Florida State. And I don't think Georgia has an issue with having to play Georgia Tech as well. Could be wrong, but I think Kirby and them would be fine moving to non-conference games. And that kind of gets into the next subject of what's Greg Sankey, the presidents, the athletic directors, the TV executives, what they're going to end up doing with that. Is that what's, in your opinion, the best for the league? It sure seems like you're leaning in that direction.
I do, and listen, I'm fine. You know, he's going to play 12 games. I'm absolutely fine with playing a 9-game schedule and still having the stipulation that you've got to play 1 out-of-conference Power 5. So you're playing, and keep in mind, it's a 9-game schedule, Ty. 1 year you're going to have 4 home games. The next year you're going to have 5, and then 4 and 5 and 4 and 5. And I think you just match up that 10th game, you're out-of-conference Power 5. When you've only got 4 home games, that's the year that you're out of conference Power 5 is a home game. When you've got 5 home conference games, that's the year you're out of conference Power 5 is a road game. I'm tired of some of these schedules, man. I grew up, Ty, and you've already clarified that I'm elderly, and I am. I admit it. I'm in my 60s. But I remember years that Alabama, now the conference wasn't what it is now. Well, or wasn't what it is today back then. But I remember a year that Alabama's out-of-conference games were against Southern Cal, Nebraska, Washington, and I'm trying to think who the other, Missouri, when they were in the Big 12. Alabama's out-of-conference, 4 out-of-conference games were those 4. So I grew up seeing big-time football every week. And that was before teams were playing Southeast Louisiana or teams that you had to not even sure what city they're in, an FCS team. So I'm kind of weighted in that way, but it's probably more my history than it is, anything current.
We're talking with Doug Amos, host of the Max Roundtable and the Score here on the Morning Rush. Doug, I mentioned Kirby Smart. I think Georgia is going to have pretty easy cakewalk. I know they got Oregon to start out, but they're like favored 14 or 15 points in that game. And I don't know if Stetson Bennett and co are going to repeat as national champions, but I do think they're going to win the East again. Who do you see as being a bigger threat on that side? Is it Tennessee, or is it Florida, or is it Kentucky?
You know, most people, I think, are tending to believe that it's Kentucky. I'm not so sure. I think Kentucky and the job that Mark Stoops has done there has been remarkable. But I think their ceiling, you know, Will Levis, I saw another mock today. Matt Miller did it, I think, for ESPN, that had him, you know, as a top 10 pick. Maybe I'm missing something. I think he's a good quarterback. I'm not sure that he is that good. So I think Kentucky has perhaps a ceiling that is exceeded by maybe the potential of a Tennessee or a Florida, just because I still say those programs, despite the fact that they may not be expected to be as good as Kentucky, I think their athletes and their roster certainly potentially is going to be better. But that's kind of where I am on it. Kentucky, if you like, when you and I talk in a few weeks, you know, most people feel like Kentucky's going to be top 2 or 3 in the league, but I think player for player, 85 to 85. I bet Tennessee's and the roster at Florida is going to be a little bit more talented than Kentucky.
I want to see what Billy Napier's got coming over from Louisiana, if he can stack up against some of the premier coaches in all of college football, which reside in the SEC. And the jury's still out on one of them, Brian Harsin, who almost got let go after a year, had some turmoil with the boosters. And we know Auburn boosters are just nuts. You probably have to deal with callers like that every day. And there's boosters, crazy boosters in every fan base, Doug. But based on some of the interactions and the things I've heard, it's pretty nuts down there. Is Harsin going to survive after this year? Point blank, does he make it after this season, Doug?
Well, if you look at their schedule, and, you know, they play, you know, the rigors of the West, and then they have Georgia in Athens. It's going to be tough. I mean, Penn State coming to Auburn early on. I think the first question you have to ask, Ty, is what's it going to take for him to keep his job? How many wins? And it's not just how many wins, it's who are they coming against, right? And so that's one bullet point. The second bullet point as to Harsin's future in my mind is how is he recruiting? And that's been a bugaboo. It was a bugaboo his first year. And, you know, so far, and we're way early before the December early signing period, you know, they've got, 2 commits. And it's just not happening there. And you know this, Ty, because of the great job that Pittman's done, you can finish top 25 in recruiting, but not even be in the top 7 in your own league in the SEC. So it's all relative, right? You could say, hey, we had a top 25 recruiting class. Yeah, but 6 teams in your league out-recruited you as it goes toward recruiting rankings. And we know that's not a completely definitive science, but that's going to be a problem. His staff is going to have to show the ability to go get the players that it needs to get, especially when your 2 biggest rivals right now are the 2 strongest programs in the country.
Let's talk about Alabama for a second. Again, we're with Doug Amos, kind enough to join us this morning, host the Max Roundtable and the Score in Alabama. Doug, Alabama's got road games against Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, and Ole Miss. Do they fall in any of those games, you think?
I think it would be I think it's safe to say that they will most likely lose one of those games. Now, they're going to be favored in every one of them. You know that. I fully believe, and Charlie, Darryl, and I've talked about this, I fully believe that this could be as talented a team as he's had, even at the same level as 2020, which we know how good that team was. But if the offensive line develops, and I think this guy could do some special things. Bryce Young, or Alabama's quarterbacks, were sacked 41 times last year, Ty, and only one other SEC team allowed more sacks. of the 14 SEC teams. But I think it would be realistic to say that they will most likely lose a game in the regular season. How many perfect seasons has he had in this run? 2009 and 2020 are the only two. So I think they'll lose a game, but I still think that ultimately they'll be in the postseason as a playoff team.
Doug, last question before we let you go. I'm not sold on Will Levis like yourself. I'm surprised as you are when I see him as high up in mock drafts. You think KJ Jefferson here in Arkansas has got a lot more praise down the stretch? You think he's going to be the second best quarterback in this league behind Bryce Young, or do you have someone else in mind?
Well, I think that Hendon Hooker at Tennessee is highly thought of, and if you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, I think it was 31-3 or 31-4, something like that. The guy ended up having an exceptional year. I like Jefferson, I do, but I think he would be one of maybe a couple or three with Rogers at Mississippi State is back. There's even some transfers that I think that are going to be impactful into their programs. I would not say that Jefferson has separated himself to be alone in that spot, but I do think he will be in a large group of quarterbacks that will be effective in 2022.
Doug, we'll leave it there, and we'll see you in less than a month down there in Atlanta at SEC Media Stand. Appreciate you making some time for us this morning.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, good stuff from Doug.
Take care, Ty.
Absolutely.
Partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon Finals, Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet online, where the game starts.